Hi there, it's Patmos and nice of you to join me for this special video where I will be sharing my 10 best tips for beginning players of Ostriv. So let's get straight into it and go to the first tip. For the first tip I have prepared this new game. As you can see, I've built the base camp and I have set up the production chain or the building queue for a forestry. I've built a clay pit and I've set 9 houses to be built. And while I unpause, let's check a few things, because if you want to get your city going, we need a few resources, and most of all we need to build 9 houses before the winter. And in order to do that, it's really important that we know the numbers. If we go check a house with a garden, you see that we need 4,200 wood, 90 nails, 1,200 clay and 400 thatch. Now, there's a little icon in front of it because it differs with each building. If we click the houses I'm building, we can already see we need one more nail for this one. We need a little bit more wood. We need some extra clay and a little bit of thatch. But this building needs even more clay. Now, this one needs less nails. So it will differ a bit from building to building. But this is the main number, and if you use these numbers and you calculate them, and I'll put them in the screen, you can see what we need to build 9 houses, a forestry and a clay pit. And of course you can also see what numbers we have to start with. We start with 11,000 wood, 1,600 nails and 4,000 thatch. And if you look at the numbers, you see that we need almost 50,000 wood, we need a little over 1,000 nails, and we need 3,600 thatch. That means that despite the wood, we have everything we need, and the clay of course, but a clay pit gives you clay for free. So all you need to do is build a forestry, make sure you chop down a lot of trees and get some wood, and you can build all 9 houses. So there's no need to build a smithy, there's no need to build a thatchery already. You can build all you need before the first winter by just building a forestry, a clay pit and 9 houses. And by knowing that gives you the ideal starting position, because I've placed 9 houses and all we have to do now is manage our people. Now we'll put in 3 workers in the forestry. That means that we have no men available at the moment, but that's fine. The 5 left will start to build this construction. As soon as we have plenty of wood in the forestry to let go of one of these people, we'll make him a builder as well, and then you can see that we can build all the houses in time and we don't have to stress about anything. And of course, when all the houses are done, you can start working on your thatchery, on the carpentry, on the smithy. You can build an extra well, all the things you think you need, but just build the forestry and 9 houses and a clay pit and you're done. You can do everything you want. So that's my first tip. So just before we go to tip 2, I want to show you what happened. I've played speed 3, just kept the game running, screen still the same, and as you can see, all resources are delivered. We still have some left. We have 160 thatch, we still have 620 nails, and of course we have wood and clay, and we have all 9 buildings, because this is the last one, almost built before the end of September. So it is very well possible, because winter starts in November, it's very well possible to just build all 9 houses way before the end of November. And after this one is done, you can just complete work on your city, build a thatchery, build a carpentry. That's all fine, but now this is done and we did a good job. And on to the second tip. My second tip would be always build houses with gardens. As you see them right here, we have houses with gardens. They were in sowing season, so they could sow their fields. These were built later, so they don't have any fields yet. They will get fields next year. But always build these houses with gardens. Why? Well, all your villagers need food. As you can see here, they come in the village with a lot of food. The only thing they got already is honey, because they have a few of these beehives. But they came in with quite a bit of food, but eventually you will run out. And you can either build farms and produce food, but you can't build them in the first year because you need to get the 9 houses done. So you can only build a farm during winter of the first year and then have a season in the second year. So with these houses, people can sustain themselves a bit. And you have to know that one villager, an adult villager, requires 100 units of food, and a child requires 50 units of food a year. So by having them grow their own food, they might be able to sustain themselves a bit. And as you can see from the houses here, this one has 3 different sources of food. Honey, probably carrots or something, and maybe some cabbage or whatever. This one has 2 different sources of food, and this one also has 3 different sources of food. Now, to be able to provide them with the variety of food they need, you need at least 3 different sources of food. So most of them already provide themselves 3 different sources of food, so they'll be happy. So all we need to do now is keep an eye on how much all these fields will give us. As you can see here, none of them has any cabbages or carrots or whatever, so that's all they're just going to get from their land. And as you can see right now, we already have 323 honey, enough to feed 3 adults. So these beehives, very productive, very good amounts of food. I really like it. So next up we'll see, quite soon they should start harvesting, how much food we can get from that. So we'll jump straight to the moment where they will get the food. And here we are, right at the start of October. The first fields have been harvested. They still need to harvest in this house. Now, I'll keep time going and let's take a look. How much food did they get? Well, they're still bringing in the carrots, awaiting 83 carrots. They had 134 cabbage and they still have honey, which means that this is over 200 units of food. Together with this, 300 units of food, enough to feed this whole family for a year. Same with this family, 300 units of honey, which is already enough. But they also got some cabbage, 60. Not a very good harvest, but remember, this is the second house. These cabbages started to grow later, so the yield will be lower. It will be even lower for this house, although they have a quite bigger field, so the number might probably run up a bit. But next year, when they can sow very early, we will get a very good harvest. Now look right here to the third house that will grow some food. 101 cabbages, 72 beetroot, and 33 cucumbers, which is enough to feed 2 adults, which is, well, 2/3 of this household. So growing your own food is very important to sustain your village and to eventually be able to grow. That was the second tip. And off to tip number 3. After you have all the basics covered of your starting village, so you have 9 houses, you have the forestry, the clay pit, the thatchery, the smithy and the carpenter, we need to think ahead into the future. And the basic thing we need is food. So it's time to start working on a farm. Now what I like to do is build one farm during or even before the first winter period. We'll build it, well, somewhere here, I think, close to the houses so that people don't have to walk too far. And of course with enough place to build 3 big fields that they can work on. So we'll get the farm done and skip ahead to that. And here we are back again, and our farm is complete, so now we can start working on the fields. I'd like to work with a system called a 3-crop rotation system. I'll explain it to you in a minute. Let's first get 3 big fields. Now the biggest size you can get is 50, 50, 50, 50. So 50 units in one direction, or basically 50 units in all directions. That's the maximum size you can get, and then you can get a very good amount of crops on your farm. It's always a bit tricky to get it done, but yeah, this will produce 2,500 units of some sort of food. And well, that really is a lot. And I like it that way because we really need a lot of food. Now it's always a bit puzzling to get the farm right because of the terrain. You have to be a bit careful. Well, 48, but that's okay. It doesn't come down to have to be 50, 50, 50 precise. You can deal with that a little bit. That's okay. But try and get as close as you can. Alright, we'll have to move it a little bit this way. Let's see, 50, 50, 50. Alright, so now we have 3 fields. What I'd like to do is get a manager, because then we can select crops for the future. And I'll work with a 3-crop rotation system, which means you have 3 field stages, year 1, year 2 and year 3. On year 1 we will grow buckwheat on this farm. On year 2 we will grow potatoes on this field. Why? Well, a field has a certain fertility. And what you don't want to run out of fertility, because then nothing will grow. And if we look at the buckwheat, it uses none of the orange fertility, it uses 20% of the green fertility and 60% of the blue fertility. Next year, when nothing is added to the field, so no fertilities are added, it uses up 50% of the orange fertility, 30% of the green and 0% of the blue. That means you don't run out of any of the fertility, so you get the maximum amount of food from it. And that's exactly what we want. The year later, you get a fallow field that will restore its fertility. So with this system you can keep harvesting buckwheat, then potato, then a fallow field, and you can just keep going. In order to have all the different foods all year long, we set the 3 different fields in a different way. And I'll show you how I do that. As you can see now, we will always get year 1, we will get buckwheat, a fallow field and potatoes. Year 2, we get potatoes, buckwheat and we have a fallow field. And year 3, we have a fallow field, potatoes and buckwheat. So every year we will get 1 field full of buckwheat, 1 field full of potato. If we get the maximum amount of food, that means 2500 buckwheat, 2500 potatoes, to get 5000 units of food. And since 1 adult eats 100 units of food, we should be able to feed 50 people with just this 1 farm. All we have to do now is get workers in there and then of course activate the fields. Now if you do this in year 1, by the end of year 2 we get a good harvest, we have plenty of food. All the houses still have plenty of food to survive the first and the second year. So with this setup, it's only December, the first year, you have the excellent start for your village. So that was my 3rd tip. Next up, tip number 4. And that's about redistributing your food. All these villagers that grow food can only eat it themselves. And not all of them have produced food, and they all produce different types of food. So what we can do is we can redistribute that food all over town, so everyone can buy the different sources of food. That can really help you sustain all your villagers and provide them with different dishes which they need. And it's also a way to start attracting immigrants early in the game, because right now we need food for sale and we need more housing. Well, more housing we are building, but we have no food for sale. So let's buy up some of these honey and cabbages and resell them around the village. Now how do we do that? Let's go to your granary. What we need is to select the sources of food that villagers can grow. In these cases we select beetroot, cabbages, carrots and honey. Well, let's keep it with that. We have to set numbers with that. Well, let's set it to 250, and then you click these little gray icons, which means buy from local producers. So right now they can buy all these resources from local producers. Of course, what we need now is a worker right there. So I'm going to get rid of one of the builders and put it in as a worker. Now as soon as that worker arrives, it will start to buy the goods. There you see them coming in. Right now all they do is sit in the granary. So we need market stalls, and I've built 2, but actually we only need 1. And let's set in the beetroots, the cabbages, the carrots and the honey. Of course we need a worker there as well. So let's get rid of one of these workers and put it in the market stall. And as you can see, people are already coming there to buy it. So now we are redistributing these sources of food to all the different households. So this household, which did not grow anything last season, still can benefit from the different types of food. And that's a great way to attract new villagers. As you can see, we have enough food for sale, so now we can attract new villagers. All we need to do is finish this house and new villagers can already come in. And that's a great big help, because new villagers means more laborers, more people that can do the different jobs, which makes your life a lot easier. So always build a granary, build 1 or 2 market stalls and redistribute all the food these people are growing, because that can really help you move forward. It's time for tip number 5. And for tip number 5 we need to build the town hall, because tip number 5 is about our economy. If you have looked closely, you've seen that when you start up the game you start with 200 gold coins, and right now we have a little less than 1500, which means that we are running a deficit. We lose money all the time. And if you want to do something about that, if you want to do something about how much wages you have to pay your laborers, etc., you need your town hall. And once you have that, you can click on the economy screen, and there you can see that we have a lot of options that we can do and change so that things might get a bit cheaper. And I like to work myself with a very small economy, and I'll show you how I do that. Right now, the monthly basic wage for somebody in the village, for instance a farmer or whatever, is 2.5 coins, which is, well, quite a lot. So I'd like to make that number a lot smaller. Let's say 0.20, and the manager's wage then automatically turns to 0.30. And of course labor wage can go even lower because, well, a laborer is a bit cheaper. We'll set that to 0.1. Now you can imagine, if you don't pay your people that much money, that if they have to pay 100% for market products, that's going to be an issue because they will run out of money very quickly. So we'll have to adjust that as well and just set it to 10% of the normal price. That means that products in the market are very, very cheap. Now, if we purchase from citizens, we can lower that price as well. We can just set it to 10%. So we won't make any money on reselling those products, but that's fine. They get a good amount of money out of it. We'll lower village rent to 0.5. Land tax will be 0.10. That's fine. They can pay that. And let's set a wealth tax for 0.5 as soon as they reach over 100 coins. What we did right now is we made our economy really small. So people make only a little bit amount of money, but everything is really cheap. So basically with this little amount of money they can still buy the same things that they could when we've paid them more and prices were higher. We will still run a little bit of a deficit, but it's very, very small. And that gives us a lot of time, many years, before we will run out of money. And, well, before we run out of money, we will start trading and we will start making money with that. So by making the economy very small, you give yourself a lot of time to actually start producing surplus goods and sell them with trade. Of course, later on in the game, if you want to have more wealthy villagers or you just want to try something different, you can play with these numbers, raise or lower some of them and see what happens. But for the start of your game, this is a very good setup, and I really recommend that you use this so you don't run out of money very quickly. Next up, tip number 6. So we have a small village. And we have our first farm set up. We do manage our economy now. So the next thing will be to get a trading post, which we are building right now. What can you do with a trading post? Well, you can trade with other villages. You can see them on the map right here. There are several villages you can trade with. And, well, trading is a really important factor in this game because some resources you need, for instance iron for your smithy to make nails and to get the horseshoe and the metal parts, you can't mine it anywhere on the map yet. This game is still in Alpha 4, so it's not near completion. So all those things need to be added, and maybe they'll never add a thing like that. So we really need a trading post to start working trade and to buy iron, for instance, to keep our smithy going. But we can also use it to make money. And what I always like to do is sell charcoal. I'll set it to 10,000 so we can sell a lot. So we'll have to wait for a few people to come into the village and set them up to work in the trading post, or we can just get a few people out of different areas so that they can get in. There he is, the manager. We just need one more now. We can use him because he's not that busy. So now a worker will start bringing in the charcoal that is ready. Although we don't have a lot of charcoal, we'll have to burn a bit. He will bring it to this trading post and we'll send a messenger out soon. They'll contact other villagers, and sometimes villagers will come to you and contact you, and you can buy different kinds of goods. Now all the goods you want to sell, you need to put in your export stock. Now I want to sell charcoal as much as I can, so we'll keep it in there. But what we can also do, for instance, is try and sell some honey. But maybe we just have a surplus right now. We don't know if we have in the future, so you want to do a one-time deal. Well, that's pretty easy. Just select the honey. Say we want to sell 1,000. We can even buy it from local producers, so you don't have to get it from your granary. You can still buy it from local producers. And you can put it in temporary stock, which means that it will only be there once, and as soon as you sell it and carts come and collect it, it'll be done. It'll be out, it's gone. So let's do it. Let's get 1,000 honey, and make sure that we can sell that later on. All we have to do now is wait for the right messenger to come, and we can buy and sell those products. If you didn't manage to get enough food sources to sell in your market store yet, and you still can't attract new villagers, the trading post is a good way to trade for some food from another village. I'll send out a villager or a messenger to Derkarchi in this case. It costs a bit of money, but that's fine. But it's a great way to attract villagers because you can buy some food, sell it in your market stall, and once you fulfill all the migration status needs, then you can buy or you can get new immigrants coming in. Now, of course, we already reached that by buying off all these local produce and reselling them. But if you have a hard time doing that, just make sure that you get a trading post, buy some food, sell it in a market stall, and you can attract new immigrants, which is a very good way to grow your village. And right now, well, we have a free house, so new villagers can come in. They're already building the next house, so even more villagers can come in then. So that's all very good. So that's it for the trading tip. Make sure you get a trading post. Start selling off charcoal. Later on, produce excess things and try and sell them. And of course, you can always buy things like honey, raspberries, anything, and try to sell them to the local villagers as well. So we're going to skip ahead to the messenger in Derkarchi. And here we are, our messenger arrived in Derkarchi. Here's the screen, the messenger arrived. So let's click it. Here we can see what they have to offer us so that we can buy that and use it. For instance, we need a lot of iron. So let's buy 1,000 iron because we can really use that to produce nails and everything we need for building. So let's make a deal. It will cost us 120. And of course we want to sell charcoal. Now, all we don't even have 8,000, or we have precisely 8,000 in the village. So that's not going to work. So what I'm going to do this time is just sell 1,500, same amount as the iron. So we won't gain or lose any money, but we get 1,000 iron and we sell 1,200 or 1,500 charcoal. Later on, as soon as all the export stock is completely filled, we can sell a lot more. Let's make a deal, and now carts will come to our village and trade it with us. That's all you have to do with trading, and it can bring you good amounts of money, the right resources that you need, and it will really help you keep your village going. And now, tip number 7. Tip number 7 is about labor. As you can see in this tip video, we've been struggling a little bit with providing all the jobs. So for instance, we don't have a full building panel that all these people will be building. Only 3 we can use. We do have a full trading post right now, but we are not fully occupying the smithy. And right now this farm is busy with sowing, and we need a lot of extra labor to do that quickly so things can grow pretty fast. Well, how can you manage labor? Well, you can either go to a building and just take people out and then later put them in again, but that's a lot of work. Sometimes you don't need everything. You just click this village, manage seasonal hiring. Well, we need a counselor for that, so that's a good thing. There we have a counselor, and now we are going to manage seasonal hiring. How does it work? Well, you click a building, for in this case the thatchery, and you go to the hiring options. Now, all these boxes that are checked are on season, and every box you uncheck will be called off season. Now, on season, this building uses 4 people, and off season it uses no people, but we don't have any off season periods. However, if we want these people to be able to help with the harvest or with the sowing, we can easily click the sowing months and the harvesting months. And now these are off season, and you can either choose to have 1, 2 or 0 people in there during that season. Now, with the thatchery, I'd like to keep 1 girl in, so we'll set it up like this: apply to all, and now it's done. This means that right now it will only use 1 villager. As soon as the month of April ends, it will get back to 4 villagers, and they can carry all the reed and make thatch out of it. But right now that means that we have more people free to do all the sowing. Of course, now the sowing is already done, so it doesn't really work. But in cases where you have a shortage of labor, or you really want to hurry and clear out your farms, or you need people anywhere else, just manage them with seasonal hiring. If there are seasons that you don't need people in the thatchery, or for instance in your fishery, if you have a fishery, once the lake is frozen they can't go out to fish, use seasonal hiring, and tell them to not be in there during winter, so they can be hired as laborers during winter, doing all different kinds of tasks. For instance, getting firewood from the forestry to a charcoal pile so it can be burned and it can be produced as charcoal. So that's a very good option. Manage seasonal hiring, set it up right, and you can manage the little amount of labor that you have and spread labor all around the different jobs that you have. That's it for tip 7. And now tip 8. And for tip 8 I have loaded up one of my villages that I like to play around with. I haven't shown this on screen yet, but here's one of my towns. And tip 8 is about food distribution. You can see if you get a bigger village that, well, people in this house need food, but they also need food in this house. And if you just go to the village center right here, where we have the town hall, it can be a long walk all the way from, let's say, this house all the way to there, and people won't do that. So you need to distribute food all over your village. So what I like to do is I build a granary and I put in an amount of market stalls, in this case 3, close to a granary. And as you can see, I have a granary right here, I have a granary right here, 2 right here in the village center. We have another one right here, we have one up here, all spread over town. We even have one right there. And they all do the same thing. The people in the granary will gather the food from the farms. People from the market stalls get the food from the granary, and in this case you can spread it out evenly all over the village. Now there's one little catch to that. If, for instance, let's say we have 2,000 buckwheat. That's all we have. And I set the limit in this granary to 2,000. It could be that all buckwheat ends up in this granary and only the people from these market stalls will get it. It might be that people from this one will walk all that way and get it and then go back, but that means that there's a lot of travel time, and that's not good because, well, food distribution will be very slow and people in this corner of your city will start to starve because they don't get buckwheat. So keep these numbers as low as you can, so things will spread out evenly. So if you have 4 granaries and you have 4,000 buckwheat, then put in 1,000 in each granary so that it will spread out evenly over all the granaries, because they can only pick up 1,000 max. And of course, even if there's still a little bit left in your farm, that's fine. It won't go bad. So just leave it in the farm, and as soon as some of these market stalls have picked up some amount of buckwheat, they will get it from the farm again. So don't use too high numbers. You can see in my village that we have over 7,000 buckwheat at the moment, and there's a new harvest coming. So that's why I use 2,000, because I want to distribute it all around town to all the granaries. And as you can see, all my granaries still have buckwheat. That's why I use these high numbers. But I usually start off with lower numbers like 500, 750 or 5,000 or 1,000, so it can spread out all over town. But it's really important that you build these granaries and market stalls together and spread them out all over town to get all your food very well redistributed around all of your town. And it's on to tip number 9. And tip number 9 will be about animals, because this game is about building your village and making a prosperous village. And what you need for that is a lot of food. Now, you can see by this icon over here that the people in this house don't have a variety of food, and you can see they only have 2 different food sources. And to have a variety of food, they need 3 different food sources. Now, of course, you can get that by just making buckwheat, potatoes and flour, or getting honey from the other houses, and then you already have 3 or 4 different sources of food. But of course, the fun thing about this game is you have multiple sources of food, and of course you want to have a lot of them. And one of the most easy animals to have are cows. I'll get time going. So all you need is a cow shed, which we are building right now. You need some hay, and you can store that in hay barracks. You need some hay dryers to dry the hay, and you need water. Well, I've set everything up, so that's pretty convenient. And the good thing about, in this case, cows, because we're building cows, is that they are almost free. All you have to do is buy cows, get a few hay dryers. The hay is for free. Nothing else eats hay, so that's very good. And you need some water, which is also for free. If you get chickens, for instance, or you get pigs, then you need to feed them things like buckwheat or grain. And that's also food that your villagers consume. But hay, your villagers don't consume hay. So cattle don't cost you any precious food that you want to give to your villagers. So all we need to do now is wait until the building is done, which is almost. And luckily we have a messenger to their Kachi, so we can buy cows. Let's get 1 bull, 10 cows, so they can reproduce. Let's make a deal. And well, it's going to take time for the cows to get here. And by that time, as you can see, the cow shed is done. Let's get a few workers in and gather a bit of hay and water, and everything will be fine. Now, it could be a good thing to set it up to only use women, because usually in the start of your village all the jobs the men have to do are plentiful and you have only a few jobs for the women. So set this to women only and you can provide jobs for all your women. You can raise these numbers a bit so that you always have plenty of food. And now when the cows come in, they can eat, they can drink, and they'll produce milk. And eventually when a cow grows old and you have a slaughterhouse, you can slaughter them and you can get beef from it and hides. So they can provide you with 2 different sources of food, beef and milk. And they're very cheap. All you have to do is buy the cows and they feed and drink things that are very cheap. Now another good thing is you can let them graze on a fallow field. So for instance, this field is now fallow. And the good thing about that is while they spend a season on the fallow field, they will put some new nutrients into the soil. It's like having the manure getting into the ground, which farmers usually do to get new nutrients in. And that works that way. So with the cows in, you can even get higher amounts of nutrients into the soil, which makes for better harvesting. So getting cows, getting 1 farm and 1 cow shed close together, put the cows on the fallow field, will provide a lot of benefits in a very cheap way. If you get chickens, for instance, you need to feed them precious food that you have to grow on your farms, which you can't get to your villagers, so that's pretty expensive. This is a very cheap way of getting extra food, getting fertile land, and just providing an extra thing in your village. Well, here are the cows. We have a bull, so next year we should probably get a few new bulls and cows born and grow the number of animals that we have. And of course, the first milk is already coming in, so that's very good. That was tip 9. And it's time for the last tip, tip number 10. And well, we have built this nice prosperous village, and what else should we do? Well, it has to do with this. Always make sure that you keep a building queue. Always have plenty of buildings ready to be built. It's very nice for city planning, so you can see where things will come. If you think, well, I need to build a well much quicker, you can always just move it around. So you can, for instance, if I want to say, oh well, we need a chapel built because, well, our village is growing, we need to get more people, and to get past 100 people we need a chapel. You can just put down the chapel, move it up the queue, so it'll be built much quicker, and that's a good way to work with that. But you can also see where the new houses will be coming because of all the flags there. So it's a very helpful tool to do some city planning. But more importantly, 7 people are working in the town hall as builders, which for now is almost 10% of all our people. If you are not building anything, that's a waste of a lot of manpower. So make sure that you always have buildings in your queue, that they are always building new things, and it also gives you time to do several different things. So if you want to start managing your farm, if you want to get to your cow shed and manage a few things, you can easily do that, and still buildings are being built. So always plan ahead, put things in your building queue, and everything in your village will run very smoothly and you'll get new buildings done like crazy. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope these tips will help you to get a better, nicer looking village. And of course, I hope to see you in another video. Thank you very much. Bye bye.